Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Buttacavoli? Here. Ms. McKenzie? Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Samayoa?
Here. Let's move to item 3A, resolution approving authorizing the refinancing of the 211 COP B Street project. Recommendation is to approve resolution PFA 2019-1, authorizing refinancing the 2011 COP B Street development project and approving the documents and action required to complete such financing. This presentation comes from our interim finance director, Ms. Jasinski. Jennifer?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to present Bud Levine. He's our municipal financer with Wolf, Hansen and Company, and he'll be making the presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. It's a pleasure to be here again. Always nice when we're able to present a possibility for the city to save some money. I was here in January, if you'll remember, where we did a study session and we talked about the possibility of refunding the 2011 D Street property and doing something with the pension obligation bonds, which we'll talk about later. But this meeting now is for the refunding of the pension obligation bond of the 2011 D Street property. To give you a quick, I know we've gone over this a couple of times, once at that study session and once at the ad hoc committee meeting that I had with Council Member McKenzie and Buttacavoli. And so we've gone over this several times. But to give a quick review, in 2011, the city issued a $7 million COP that refunded the original 2006 COP to acquire the B Street property. These current bonds, the 2011 bonds, are refundable now. They're actually technically refundable in 2021, but bond law allows us to refund them in an advance basis, and so we can take advantage of the very low interest rates right now, refund it, set up an escrow to pay off the 2011 bonds in 2021. The lease properties under the original 2011 issue were the B Street project itself and the Bryant Field Ballpark. Now, what we're going to do is set up a lease transaction very similar to a COP because we're going to do a private placement. We have Brandis Tallman as a placement agent who's going to prepare an RFP ready to go out now to 17 different banks that are going to propose how they are going to, what kind of terms they would present for acquiring the lease transaction. The lease properties in this transaction will be the Riverfront Park, will be the fire station, and Bryant Ballpark. That will allow the B Street property to be completely free and clear of the lease requirements of the 2011 issue and be able to be used in any way capacity that the city would like. The lease payments that are going to be generated through the transaction will be sold to the successful bank, and the bank will take that money, send it to the escrow to pay off the 2011 bonds, pay the cost of issuance, and the 2011 bonds now COPs will go away. And I know that came up as an issue or a question in the work study. There will be no more requirements for the city to make payments on the 2011 COPs. The only requirements will be to make the lease payments on the new 2019 issue. In addition, there is currently a project fund that has not been completely used, held by the trustee on the 2011 COPs. It has approximately $143,000 available in it. It was designed to be used for development or studies involving what to do with the B Street property. There were two choices we had when we put together the structure. One was to bring that $143,000 in as part of the refunding. The other is to release it to the city for continued use involving the B Street property. and in discussion with staff, that was the decision to be made. So right now, the structure would call for the $143,000 to be sent to the city, to be used by the city for those purposes. Let's go, okay. Now, let's take a look at what the lease transaction is going to look like. The par amount of the leases is going to be $6,850,000. There's a current reserve fund of $500,000 at the trustee. And by the way, I will go into this a little bit later, but the actual amount that's on deposit now, we have subsequently found out since we put this together, is $600,000, which is going to actually increase the savings. But based on the $500,000, there would be a total of $7,350,000 in the sources of funds for paying off the B Street property, COP. $7,219,000 will be put in an escrow to make the remaining payments until 2021 and to pay off the 2011 B Street COPs. Next page. This is something new that we are required to show when we're getting a refunding approved. It's a Section 5852 disclosure that the state of California now requires. Even though we do not have the final numbers because the lease has not been sold yet, it'll be sold, as I said, through the RFP, request for proposals, from the various banks. We have done an analysis and have come up with our best estimate of what the refunding is going to look like when it is passed, when it is priced. The true interest cost looks like it's going to be 4.35. Keep in mind that the 2011 bonds carried COPs carried an interest rate of 6.35 to 7.88, going to be replaced with an interest rate of approximately 4.35. The financing charge, which is all the costs involved in issuing the lease, are $130,000. The net proceeds then will be $7,220,000. The sum of all the payments that are going to be made under the lease, $9,854,000. This will produce projected savings based on these numbers of around $1.6 million over the remaining 18 years of the lease for the city. In other words, your debt service payments on the new lease are going to be $1.6 million less than what you're currently paying on the 2011 if you had left the 2011 in place. We have to also show the present value of savings. This simply is taking the $1,594,000 that's going to be realized by the city over the life of the issue, 18 years, and putting that into the perspective of what is the current value of that today. If you were to be paid cash for that $1.6 million or roughly in savings, and that amount is $1,148,000. Remember though, the real cash savings here will be, and I'll show that in a minute, $1,594,000, assuming the lease is sold at the levels that we are anticipating. And there's another calculation we have to do, which is to take the reserve fund cash that we've brought into the financing, and for calculation purposes, take that and deduct that from the net present value. That's a total of $649,000. That represents a 10% savings on the face value of the 2011 COPs. You will see later when you're going to look at the debt management policy that will need to be approved, that the state recommends as a good business practice that that net present value be at least 3%. That's the important takeaway from this. You're supposed to have at least 3%. You're going to have 10% on this transaction. Lastly, on the next page, cost of issuance. Question came up at the ad hoc committee about what's our estimated breakdown of that cost of issuance, and I said I would bring that back to the council, and here it is. Here's the breakdown as we know it now of what the various costs are going to be that total that $130,000. We do have a miscellaneous of $7,500. I think these costs are fairly accurate as to what they will actually be. There may be a slight variance. Investors' counsel is something that will be the attorney representing the buyer bank the investment bank that is going to be buying the lease. That can range anywhere from 10 to 15,000. We're using an estimate of 10. We have the 7,500 in the miscellaneous to cover that. The last page on this is then what the financing will look like, assuming we sold at that you notice the interest rate, 4.35%. You'll see on the left with the 4.35% and the principal amount of the lease that's going to be paid back over the 18 years, and the fourth column over is the new debt service. If you look down at the bottom, the new debt service is $9,854,000. If you look at the next column over, that's the existing debt service from the 2011 COP. You will notice that that's $11,449,000. The difference is $1,594,000. If you look at the yearly savings, there's a very interesting dynamic on the way the numbers will fall and the payment dates, but there will be around $474,000 of the savings will be realized in the first year, and after that, it's a fairly level $65,000. I mentioned earlier that the reserve fund is $600,000 and not $500,000. It means that around $100,000 in bonds less in leases will be issued, and therefore the savings will be probably another $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year. So at this point, by the way, I did not introduce Rob Pancrantz, who's our senior analyst and director of operations, and he's getting some field experience by joining me on this trip to one of my favorite cities. So
Thank you. Questions from council members?
Just an observation,
Yes.
if I might. We're going to get off that $647,000 a year payment now on
Yes.
this thing?
Yes.
It'll be 500 and some thousand?
correct. And hopefully, the interest rates are being amazingly accommodating right now. I don't want to get too excited about it, but from the time I did these numbers to today, that rate is probably going to be closer to 4% rather than 4.35. Now, what happens with tariffs and all the stuff that's going on economically, that could change things. We want to get to this as quickly as we can, but I use the more conservative numbers. But the answer to your question is yes, and hopefully the payment will even be lower.
One other question, using Beckworth Riverfront Park, including the sewer ponds and all, collateral on this note?
Yes, in other words, that's...
Why was that selected, may I ask?
Yes, because we needed to have what is acceptable asset for the banks that are going to be doing this. And they like having assets that are usable by the city and that are significant. And that's why of the available assets that you had, once we eliminated the B Street property, which never was a favorite asset of the original buyers that actually bought the COPs, we came to the conclusion that those were the best to use.
Well, that's a good choice. I'm just wondering, will they require any improvements on that by the city?
No. It's actually, nothing needs to be done to it. It's simply going to be a leased asset that creates the cash flow for being able to generate the sale.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any question? Go ahead, sir.
Just make a comment because Vice Mayor and I sat in on the ad hoc, which it's very difficult to understand everything that's being said here, and we got way into the depths of it.
Yes, we did.
But to simplify all of it, it's it's just the interest rate change for the most part. The fact that rates are lower than they've ever been right now is where we benefit out of this whole thing. And then moving our collateral gives us the ability to do what we want with B Street, which could be many different forms. But that really is kind of simplifying it down to maybe some that are listening that don't. It's complicated. It's complicated.
But you both did an excellent job and asked a lot of good questions, and it was a very interesting, involved discussion at that meeting, and obviously you took the right takeaway from it, so glad to hear that commented back. So,
Any other questions, comments, Vice Mayor?
And just comment, you answered my question, because I was going to ask what the possible variance would be on the interest rate, and you told us it could possibly go down even lower than, and
I mean,
not
it could
go
go
up.
either way, but the trend appears to be down and at least for the right now. I would worry about interest rates by the end of the year, but for right now, I think we're still in a very, very accommodating interest rate market for these type of refundings, and that's why many cities are really rushing to take advantage of that while the rates are what they are.
Thank you.
Sure. Are there any questions on the documents at all? I think there was a pretty good explanation in the report that accompanied this.
Correct.
So.
Any questions on the presentation or the documents? Just want to clarify. So this debt is going to just take the place of what we currently owed, and it's not a 20-year debt. It's whatever number of payments we have left.
18 years remaining, yes.
It's 18 years remaining.
Yeah,
So
we
that's the
purposely did not extend the
Oh, good.
term
Thank
at
you.
all. We wanted to keep it equal to or even less than if we could, but the numbers worked out the best as an equal to, so correct.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I don't see why this is bad news.
Money, 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 honey.
Any comments from the public on this matter? Seeing none, so we're gonna move, I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve PF 2019-1 as a public finance authority, and then do you want me to adjourn and go back as a city, or are we gonna take this on as a city later? As a city? Okay. So we'll take two actions, is that what you need? Okay. So we have to take two resolutions, one as a public finance authority and another one as a council. So I'd like to entertain a motion, unless there's any other comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution PFA 2019-01.
I make a motion to approve.
Second? Let's move it.
Motion by Hudson, second by Simmons. If there are any further questions or comments, all those in favor say aye.
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 Now we're going to adjourn to our city council meeting?
Do you want to add anything?
Second motion.
Okay, so now I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution 2019-2024 as council, authorizing the refinancing of the 2011 COP. Motion by Vice Mayor. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bartolowoli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Now we're done. Now we'd like to adjourn to our regular meeting, starting now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So glad to get